In this video, we are taking a look at selectivity and bias in news. We feel that technological advances have caused us to be more selective, and this has increased the chance for bias in the world of media. Our world today is busier than ever. Our lives are constantly changing, and so is technology. We can see obvious changes in cell phones then compared to now, and also in computer usage, as many people today engage in social networking sites such as Facebook and Twitter.
I was actually just talking about this with one of my friends a couple weeks ago about how to think, I don't know, in 1995, 96, to have a computer was a really big deal, and to have like one of those massive computers that's like this big sitting on your desktop was really new. So now it's like you just carry around a computer in your pocket essentially with a cell phone.
With the increase in technology, the way that many of us receive news has changed. Not only can we look to print news, we can also find news online or by some other means involving media.
I think there's a huge amount of pressure on people to report the news first, even though it may not be fact yet, that they report it when it's rumor rather than fact, and that was something that never happened before. And then if people find out that what they indeed reported was wrong, which was just unheard of, then they'll turn around and say, well, now my sources are saying. I think that's a really, really bad trend, but I understand the pressure that people feel that they're under to report the news first.
I'm on the computer all the time trying to look up story ideas, talk to sources, and then of course, obviously you talk to people on the phone, but the fact that you can have it, you can type it up on the computer and publish it within an hour is just something that's, it's fairly new, and that's definitely changed the world of media and newspaper writing, so that's a really cool thing for me to be a part of.
I would give anything to be a breaking news reporter and have the resources that you guys have now. And my favorite thing would be Facebook. And, for example, I probably had to do, 15 or 20 of the Jack Kevorkian suicides. And at the end there, he was literally wheeling up dead bodies to emergency rooms like at midnight and just dropping people off. If I had Facebook now, I could get on Facebook, I could figure out who that person was, I could send messages to family members, I could get responses on Facebook. Being a reporter would just be so awesome.
Mainly through the Detroit Free Press, but that's mainly for Detroit sports. I watch the Daily Show and local news, sometimes read the Battle Creek Enquirer.
I'd say whatever kind of ads I see online. I don't watch the news on TV, I don't read the newspapers, so whatever pops up online, I guess.
Through things like Twitter and Facebook and social media, the fact that you can get so much news online as opposed to having to go to the newsstand and buy a newspaper, or even lately, the past 50 years with TV, you don't even have to have a TV, you can just have a computer and do that. So for me, it's been helpful to have it so the accessibility of it is a lot better. So for me, it's a lot easier to get what I want when I want it.
Technology supplies us with a huge amount of information. So how does that affect how we get our news?
Well, I'm very careful about where I go for my news. There's only certain websites that I consider credible, and for example, like most of the major dailies or CNN.com or MSNBC, you have to be really careful where you're getting your news from.
In the United States, I remain unconvinced that the greater amount of information means that we have a better and more informed public, and I don't think more information means better information. I'm skeptical about that still.
Anybody who has a camera, access to a computer, cell phone, whatever, a lot of them see themselves as journalists even though they have no training, but as citizen journalists, and they think they can report the news. And I think in a lot of ways that's made things really bad for credible journalists.
They used to call this peripheral reading, that when you read a newspaper and you flip every page, simply by doing that, you absorb something about what's going on in the world. And that even if you're only scanning headlines, if you see, Libya or Syria in a headline every day for a month, it at least triggers this idea something really important is going on there. And I think the online experience has the potential to to obscure that process, or to make it something that isn't a regular, I think it has the potential to work against that in some ways.
Unless it's something really, really big that I can take part in myself, like I just don't really need to hear about it. It's too depressing.
Well, the selectivity can be bad if all you do is listen to things or read things that correlate with things you already believe. I think a good citizen is one who's informed, a person who is well informed about an issue from multiple perspectives. And I think there's a potential to be too selective in, again, there's two sides to this. I mean, if people in the 21st century choose to be informed about things that they hear about, it seems to me that it's actually easier to find out multiple perspectives and to get past the selectivity.
And I think it's also important to learn about the things that you might not really like, but you should know about anyway. Like, I know, actually, a lot of my friends aren't interested in politics at all, but it's like if you don't pay attention to politics, you're not going to know anything about what's going on in the country. So I don't want to say that it's a good thing, because they might just tend to pick their interests and not necessarily what's important. But then I do think it's like, well, you're obviously going to read more or watch more of what is interesting to you. So I think it's kind of a good and bad thing in that aspect.
But as people increasingly migrate to digital platforms as the primary way that they get the news, if the platform is only showing them things that already fit things that they've shown that they're interested in, then I think that can contribute to people that, you basically are told only what you want to hear. And I think that goes against some of the most utopian possibilities, or it's a violation of some of the most utopian possibilities that something like the internet has, which in theory enables a much greater amount of information to be available to the public. And the catch is that they have to go find it. And if these news sites are filtering it in a way that the people aren't having the opportunity to choose all that, then yeah, I think it can contribute to people becoming more biased in some ways.
Well, what's kind of funny is I think we're losing more of the mainstream media, which that's all you have to go to, and now there might be left-wing publications or broadcasts or multimedia operations that you go to if that's the way that you lean, or right-wing or whatever. So I think everybody is developing their own opinions on whatever based on what side they're on. So I think we're losing more of the mainstream.
This side is right, this side is wrong, end of story. So I think a lot of people do that with news now because they can. It's not like you have to get both sides of a story anymore, because you can go to websites that are biased towards one way or another.
I think it's a matter of being curious and being open to alternate perspectives, and I don't know that that's age dependent. I think that's more a person's commitment to being informed about what's going on in their world.
Well, I think that every reporter, not so much because of technology, I think everybody has to realize that we all have our own personal biases, whether we think about them or not, just based on the way that we're raised. So that's why it's really important when we're doing our stories, whether multimedia, print, whatever, that you're talking to people from all different walks of life and that you truly are getting all sides.
I think in some ways reporters, I don't know if they're more or less conscious. They're very conscious right now, I think, many reporters, of being perceived as being biased. I think people on both sides of the political spectrum hurl the term biased around, or the term slanted all the time. People on the right wing will say that the New York Times is this biased left-wing rag. People on the left will say that they'll call Fox News faux news, or fixed news, or something like that. But there's this belief that people who work for organizations that you think are biased are biased. And I think many people who work for these organizations, some people are biased, or overtly biased, but I think many of them are, regardless of who they work for, are well-intentioned people who seek truth and want to report it faithfully and honestly.
When I've written things in the past, I definitely had to kind of check myself and realize, wait a minute, is what I'm saying fair? And then go back and make sure I'm not forgetting part of the story or something like that.
Our original hypothesis is that technological advances have caused us to be more selective, and this has increased the chance for bias in the world of media. Our research found that there are positive and negative aspects of selectivity due to technology. Professor Stam said, Selectivity can be bad if all you do is listen to things that correlate with what you believe. However, if people choose to be informed about what they hear about, it's easier to find out multiple perspectives. Rachel, the state news reporter, said, "They might just tend to pick their interests and not necessarily what's important. But you're obviously going to read more or watch more of what is interesting to you." We conclude that technology influences selectivity. However, the fate of bias relies solely on individuals. The news sources are everywhere, and it is our responsibility to take advantage of them.